All right, y'all, we got this mic, and we're going to see how long we can, it's going to be like watching acrobatics, okay? Really, it'll be more like a tumbling class. Hey, listen, first of all, I'm going to explain to you guys what curiosity-based conversations are in a second. But first, I want to kind of walk through the bios of these guys because you'll have a better appreciation for them after I finish. So let me introduce you to this individual, Paul Sambrook, all right? Paul is the Global Marketing Director of Rapport. And this, of course, as most of y'all know, is the out-of-home media agency for IPG media brands, and they were responsible for the out-of-home effectiveness study standing on the shoulders of giants. He's in, well, you'll be able to tell this when he talks. He's from the UK, so if you wonder why he talks funny, don't be critical of him, okay? And all our notes just left, just like that. I pressed a button and everything disappeared. Paul has won the IPA Effectiveness Award for the National Health Services and culminated his work by winning the London 2012 Olympic Games. Now, I don't know if that means he won the advertising rights for it or if you've got gold medals in every. He won every one of the events. He also is famous for leading UK's Rapport Group in the pitch for 20th Century Fox. And he is the founding recipient of the accredited MIPA award. Am I right on that? Okay. That is the highest professional advertising qualification awarded by the Institution of Practitioners in Advertisement, which means he actually knows what he's doing, which that's a pretty good thing. Now, Rick Steele is Executive Vice President of Marketing Operations for Park Outdoor. 30 years, he's been in the media veteran for 30 years, but his first 20 years were with cable advertising with a group called TCI and a relatively unknown group called AT&T. And he handled a lot of the marketing and the corporate sales development for AT&T for a number of years. And then, y'all, he met Kevin Gleason of Adams Outdoor and went to work in out-of-home for Adams and Fairway, right? Mm-hmm. For both. And then in 2016, he went back above the Mason-Dixon line to North New York, which, Don, you can appreciate that, right? It's like Buffalo, but bigger. And he and his wife, Martha, of 31 years, and their 2 children live there. And, of course, now he's conducting all the development for Park Outdoor. So why are we here? Why are we here? So you look around this room, we've got a pretty good combination of buyers and sellers. And let me tell you, for most of you that are selling, and y'all please correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm looking around, I don't see a lot of people that spend their entire sales life in New York City in this room. For most of us that are on the selling side, about 80% of our business is local. Does that sound about right to y'all? And about 20% is national. And I think we have something in common, and that is what the buyer's perspective is of us when we're selling nationally. Because, when talking to Paul, I said, obviously, you've seen the best and the worst of us in national sales. And as national buyers, you probably wish we were better. And I told him, as sellers, I feel comfortable in saying, we wish we were better too, okay? And that's what today's all about, because there's a common flaw that I think everybody goes through when they're selling nationally. And that is, you don't have the kind of relationship you have with local people, right? I mean, you just don't have that. And so you try to build that relationship nationally, and what we tend to do as sellers is we tend to go transactional really quick. All of a sudden it's price, and position. You know, that's kind of where the conversation falls. And so it's interesting. Rick, because of, I know a lot of it had to come from your time with AT&T, but Rick has taken what he calls a curiosity-based approach, which means don't walk in there thinking you know what they want. Ask the kind of questions where you can really find out what they want, and then being able to satisfy their needs. And so Rick has developed something that I think is pretty interesting, and I would like to ask him to share with you what this whole curiosity-based approach looks like and how it's helped them with Park Outdoor. So, Rick?
Okay, thank you. Try this clicker here. Okay, well, thank you guys for hanging in there today. You're hardcore. I've gotten word that the pool is filled with attendees. So the fact that you're here is much appreciated because we put some work into this. So hopefully it's worth it. So I thought I'd give you a good story that you could maybe take back with you. It's a treat for you since you hung in there today. It's all about, you know, asking great questions and the result of doing so. So the story is about a lady who was really a serial, no pun intended, shoplifter. And she continued to go to this grocery store week after week after week and steal things, and she kept getting caught. And the manager felt bad for her and kept asking her to stop. Don't do it again. If you do it again, I'm going to call the police. She wouldn't listen. So this happened 5 or 6 times, and he finally had enough. He said, that's it. You did it again, I'm calling the police. So the police came, wrote her a ticket to appear in court, and a couple of weeks later, her and her husband walked into the courthouse, and husband of 30, 40 years, something like that, and he sat down in the I guess the pedestrian area or the public area, and she went up to see the judge, and the judge said, ma'am, why are you here? She said, I was caught shoplifting. And he asked her, well, why would you do such a thing? Well, I don't know. I can't help myself. It's just something that I have to do when I'm in these stores. Well, do you need money? Is that the problem? No. So there's really no reason behind this. No. How many times have you been caught shoplifting? And she said, well, this is probably the 6th time. And the judge said, so the manager of the store kept giving you a break, right? Time after time, correct? Yes, Judge. He said, well, that's it. We've got to teach you a lesson. So, ma'am, tell me what you stole. She said, Judge, I stole a can of peaches. Okay. How many peaches were in that can? She said they were cut in half. There were 3 halves in the can, I think. He said, okay. Well, as I said, I wasn't kidding around, and you need to be punished. So I'm going to sentence you 1 night in county jail for each half peach that you stole. And she put her head down, and all of a sudden in the back of the court, her husband raised his hand. He said, Your Honor, if it pleases the court, she also stole a can of peas. That's a good joke. Feel free to use that. I stole it from somebody.
It's the highest form of compliment.
Yes, thank you. Yeah. So what brought us here? This is my crazy idea. I attended the conference last year, and many of the sessions, my colleague and I, and me, Dave Feldman, who's the COO of Park Outdoor Advertising, he and I together attended as many of the sessions as we could, and to me there was an awful lot of talk about advancements, technology, data, all this stuff, and there just wasn't a lot of conversation about what the client thinks. And I really left that conference feeling like, man, I don't think it's just a little company like Park Outdoor that cares about what the client thinks. And we're so proud of all the advancements we've made, yet how many times are we really asking the client what they think? And we're guilty of it at Park Outdoor. So that's really the genesis of this, and what I had in mind, and it's something that we try to talk about all the time at Park Outdoor, and I thought that maybe there's some juice here and that we would share it. So hopefully you feel the same thing. We have a term that we use at Park Outdoor. It's the why, not the what. So because we're kind of in the sign business, I hate to even say that, the what is so easy to say. What? Oh, it's a bulletin. It's a right-hand read. It's on, Route 20. It's visible. It gets, however many impressions, blah, blah, blah. That's the what. And, as far as I'm concerned, a telemarketer could sell that. We really want to know the why. So that's what we try to focus on and not get really excited about the what and try to figure out the why. And some of the things that get us into trouble at Park Outdoor is our experience. We find that institutional knowledge, and we have a lot of it, believe me. We have people who've been selling outdoor for 10, 20 years. Just imagine, and I'm sure you can, the amount of institutional knowledge that these folks have. And to us, it just undermines curiosity because you're just so willing and interested in talking about what you already know. So what I did was to build sort of an example of the two types of conversations that I hear and see. And believe me, we're not perfect. I'm not perfect. A lot of this is telling you things that I've seen before. And I think you'll be able to relate to it. So for us, we look at two types of sales. There's a transactional sale, and then there's a curiosity-based sale. And when we look at transactional sales, we think of it kind of as selling an annuity. Not to be too harsh, but a magazine subscription that you hope renews every year. I mean, how many times have you heard that in your sales department where, did they renew? I mean, my God, did they renew? We do. We get ourselves into that trap, and we're guilty of it. But that just the lights are flashing about that being a transactional relationship. And we're content with the contract. So an account executive makes a sale, they bring the contract back, we enter it into the system, it hits the sales report on Friday, and we're happy and we move on. But we have no idea of how the client's going to measure it. The curiosity is going to be horrible, as I'll show you some examples of that. So to us, that's sort of the life of a transactional sale. Here's some Here I'm going to show you some examples of the creative. But a transactional sale for us would look like this. And you've probably seen these before. And here's the example that I'd like to give you. You're working with a fence company, and I'm going to show you some creative of that. And the first meeting with that company, you make your introductions, you have a little bit of small talk, and then you talk to them about the inventory that you have. And the prospect may say, do you have inventory over here in this town? Name whatever that town is. That, to us, is the point where you decide if it's going to be a transactional sale or it's going to be a curiosity-based sale. So what we try to avoid is answering yes to that question. What we want to do is ask why. Why is it important that you are interested in inventory in this area? And to start building the conversation from there. But if we didn't, we would probably say, yes, we do. Okay, great. It's available in 2 months. Okay, that sounds about right to me. It costs X. and then you have to pay for production. And we could probably even write up a contract that day, have them sign it, go back to the office, enter it, start ordering creative based on very little conversation, and then off we go. And then that's what it looks like. That's what the contract looks like. And at times, we're all guilty of being happy with that. And we just move on to the next deal. And then we end up with creative like this. Right?
There are no creative people in the room, are there?
Hey, you ride park outdoor markets. I mean, we've got some of this nonsense up. That's an annuity sale, right? There's not too many words on that. So we've all seen it, right? We're all guilty of it. We accept it. We shouldn't, but it happens. So if we transition, instead of saying, yes, we have inventory over here, it's available, we take more of a curiosity-based approach. And we ask them, why is that area why is that area important to you? What are you trying to accomplish? You can think of all the basic questions that you might ask this fencing company. So if we were to really dig into the questions with this fencing company, we would say, why is the area important to you? And he might tell us, well, there's a housing addition that's going to have 200 homes. Okay, that's interesting. What's the timeline of the build out of these 200 homes? And he or she will give us the answer to that. Okay. How many people in housing additions typically add fences to their property? Well, our research shows that 70% of people add fences to their property. Okay, I didn't know that. You might also ask, what type of fence? Chain link, wood, privacy fence, how tall are they? To build your knowledge, what's the typical cost of a fence? I don't know what it is. They might say, well, it's $10,000. What are your margins on that? Because I'm curious. I'm genuinely curious in that. That fascinates me. And it helps me become a bit of a category expert the next person I go to, and I can make some assumptive questions. Not be a know-it-all, but just some assumptive questions. Okay, so if 70% of the homes in this subdivision are potential customers to you, that's what you told me, right? Okay. So the potential is a gross of, what, $560,000? Could you do 30% of that? Could your company handle that? They might say yes, they might say no, but let's say that they said yes. So then we understand the opportunity. We've sort of built a case for the opportunity. Not one time have I talked about outdoor. Who wants to talk about outdoor? That's boring. That's what we already know. I'm not an expert, but I know enough about outdoor that I'd rather learn about fencing, frankly. That's interesting to me because I don't know anything about it. So now we've developed the opportunity because we can do the math. We've already figured out, okay, here's the opportunity, 70% of homes, average $10,000. We've done that math. And we've all done it in our head as we're sitting here. But now the next step for us is, what does the consumer think? So we've gone down the opportunity path, now the creative path, which to me is the most important, because God knows if you put a billboard up, people are going to see it. So let's talk about the consumer. Why do they get fences? What spurs them to do that? Now, I'm sure some of you have fences. I have an underground fence, but I've had fencing before, and I know why I've got it. Maybe I wanted to keep the kids in. I wanted to keep the dogs in. I wanted to surround a pool. I wanted to keep other dogs out. I wanted to keep other kids out. Who knows what they're going to say, but they're going to tell us in their experience what their potential consumer is thinking. And we're taking these notes and we're building sort of our creative brief. Now, a company our size, we don't really have creative briefs per se. We can get better at that at Park Outdoor. but it's not something that happens every single day. So based on the opportunity that we established and sort of justifying an investment, maybe the contract would look like this instead of the transactional sale. So a couple of benefits to me that I can think of with the two approaches. What we really don't like about transactional selling is that they tend to be less panels, maybe one, maybe two, and the client becomes married to those panels. I mean, how many times have you guys been in front of a customer and they say, "My billboard," and they get married to the structure? And there's no better way to suppress rate growth than have the same customer on the same inventory year after year after year. Who wants to go back to the same client year after year and try to get a 3% rate increase and try to justify that? Who wants to do that? I don't. I'll tell you that. One of the fellows this morning mentioned about yield. How else can we get yield? There's very few ways better than driving rate. And to be able to drive rate with the same client on the same inventory year after year, it's just very, very difficult. So this approach, where we're selling multiple panels, we're moving it around the market, they're not married to a specific location, they're not going to lock it in. Can I buy it for 3 years? That sort of thing. The long-term sales like that. We're stuck. And if we want to have an annuity out there, 3 or 4 annuities that we're selling long-term, I guess we can do that. But we're kind of stuck once we get into that gutter. And we have it. I mean, God, we have 1,500 panels at Park Outdoor, and we have a certain number of bulletins that have the same damn client on it year after year. And it's just a battle to just bump up that rate a little bit. So the opportunity might look like this. Now the creative, instead of what we had before, these aren't OB winners. I understand, and I don't know if we want OB winners all the time. We want stuff that works, that's engaging, that's thought-provoking, because this is what the client told us, that they can relate to. That's really simple. So that's kind of my message. I hope some of it made sense. And I appreciate you taking the time to listen to it and avoiding the pool. The sun's dangerous.
Yes.
So you should.
So,
Thank you.
thank you so much, Rick. I got a mic for you right there. Thank y'all. And look, first of all, what Rick has done is to be commended. For those of you that are out there selling locally, you know how difficult it is to get to the point where you're asking the kind of questions he did when he started doing the get to why they want to use this. So for those of you on the national side, the sellers, I hope you can appreciate that was a big jump for a local rep to go from something that was just transactional with price and position to where you actually said, let's talk about your business. Let's talk about what is it that's important to you? Where are your pain points? Where do you see the business growing? And then in his case, being able to come up down to the price point, what kind of profit margin do you have, and justifying it. And that's really a step up on a local level. But then for those of you that are buyers at a national level, it just doesn't work for you. It just doesn't work for you. And you've all been the victim of someone like us coming into your office for the first time, and we walk in and we're so excited that we're there, right, Nancy? So, Nancy, how are you? Nancy, how are you? Are you fine? How's your family? Great. And business, how's your business? Great. So you're doing well, and the business is doing well, and did you shoot that duck? You know what I mean? I mean, you don't know where to start, do you? And that's why I am so excited that we have Paul here, because here is the exact opposite of what we deal with locally. Now we're dealing with somebody who is worldwide marketing director for a major out-of-home buying agency. What does he expect when someone walks in there who's trying to develop that national business for the first time? So you've got a microphone right there. Are you comfortable I can just stand here and ask you the questions. Is that okay for you?
That's fine by me.
All right.
Do you need subtitles, anyone? I did ask for subtitles, but they've not been provided, sorry.
All right. Don't worry, that'll come later. So we look at the sales process, and we look at it, I think most of us in this room from a seller standpoint of what do you do before the call, what do you do during the call, and then what should happen after the call. So when I think of that, there's so many touch points before that sales call ever happens. What do you, I know there's nothing that could be worse for you than to have anyone from any media sit in front of you and say, so Paul, who are some of your clients? Because, at that point, I'm sure that's where you say, hey, look, I'm really running low on time. Thank you very much. What do you expect them to know and do before they come in for that first sit with you?
A bit of research. So as you've kind of alluded to already, you want somebody to have taken an interest in your business. There's enough information out there, public domain, websites, blogs, social media. You should have a decent understanding at a base level. To that point, though, I don't expect too much either, right? There's a limit to what you can know when you meet somebody for the first time. So I want to know that you've done some research, but asking questions is crucial. To Rick's point, you want somebody to be curious. You want them to actually want to care. That was a word I scribbled down from Rick's point. Ultimately, I'm representing my clients' businesses, and so what I'm looking for is for somebody who cares about those client businesses as well as much as I do. So good questions is kind of crucial to that. Okay.
So I look at all the touch points that we have before we ever get to the call. And I think everybody in this room will agree with me on this point. There's more change happening in how we sell today than I think has happened in this industry probably in 50 years. And that's simply because we operate now in a flat world. How many of us, before you ever make that first contact with a national advertiser, and in many cases with a local advertiser, how many times does it have to start with an email? That's the only way. You can't be what I like to refer to as the professional trick-or-treater, right? Where you just go down the street and you knock on doors and you do everything but yell trick-or-treat, but you're showing up and you hope you can get 15, 20, or 30 minutes. But when you're dealing with a national advertiser, that first touch, is it mostly email for you?
Yeah, I think the world is digital now, isn't it? So most people will send an email first. For what it's worth, I don't necessarily think it's the right first touch point. Just out of interest, how many buyers have we got in here? Any? Is it all sellers or one? Obviously Jill. So two buyers. So how many emails on average a day do you get? Over 50 a day? Way more. Same for you?
95?
There you go.
Ouch.
If you send an email, there's a huge chance it's going to get lost straight off the bat. We didn't ask for that email. We didn't ask for that contact. We're busy. We've got other things going on. So email's hard to cut through and stand out. That said, it's a bit less intrusive, which is a good thing. So phone call, difficult, right? So straight away, if you're in the middle of a presentation again as a buyer and your phone rings, first reaction is what? annoyed, pissed off, right? Really pissed off, right in the middle of that presentation, and somebody is now trying to get my time, my attention, and I don't want it. I'm doing something else. So I think it's really difficult, in all honesty. It's just trying to get that balance between making an initial impact, and that's before you even get to the communication, the persuasion.
Yes.
You're trying to get on somebody's radar, and that is a challenge. There's not an easy win. But who gets mail anymore? Proper physical print mail, just out of interest. You're talking 10, 15, 20 phone calls a day, 50 to 100 emails a day, but one piece of mail a day? There's other ways that you can maybe make that first contact, the first touch point, in a softer way, a less intrusive way.
That is
then
interesting.
The
I have
phone
never
call
heard that.
isn't quite as intrusive. I just think, again, we work in a creative industry, right? And there's lots of different ways that you can approach these things.
So, Paul, I would imagine the majority of people in this room use some type of CRM system, right? And one of the wonderful things, if you're using Salesforce, is you can develop these beautiful first contact letters to develop the business, to make that original touch. And just like they admitted, 95, Nancy, roughly? 95 emails you get from people trying to make that first introduction. So a letter, literally, that would catch your attention.
I think the point being is just, we work in advertising, and if I was doing this from a client brief, the thing I'm trying to do for my client is get impacts. Before everything else, before you communicate your message, before your persuasion, you're trying to get impacts. And just taking the time to think about how to get that impact, think about what your competition is, and do it in a least intrusive way as possible.
Wow. Are there any, the people that have gotten through to you on that first touch with email, is there anything that they did that caught your attention, that you looked at it and you said, I am going to respond, yes, contact me?
Short, concise, relevant.
That's it.
That's it.
To the point.
Yeah, I mean, the amount of emails I get that are a page, 2 pages long on first touch. I've got other stuff to be doing. I'm not going to take the time to read that. Again, we've got all of us, by the way, me included, when I'm doing the first touch to somebody else, to a new client, I'm getting in the way of whatever it is they're trying to do, right? So understanding that, being aware of that, delivering your message as concise and as simply as possible. Relevance is massive. Again, the amount of emails I get that is just not relevant. I don't know what the person is actually wanting to do and say. So I will respond if it's relevant, if it's concise, if it's short.
How about, do people ever get through to you on the phone?
Yeah, so absolutely. I mean, we're a non-hierarchical business. My mobile number is on our website. People can get hold of that. So absolutely, if somebody wants to take the time to make a phone call, they can do that easily enough.
So what calls worked? What did somebody say that made enough of an impression for you to say, yeah, I'll see you Tuesday at 9?
Again, it's just being a good human being, right? Polite and
wait a minute, you've got to be nice?
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh,
you've got to be
that's
nice, yeah. But at the same time, still again, you're interrupting me, so be aware of that. Be concise, be clear. The same thing of rules of email and phone call, I think, are still the same. It doesn't matter your choice of medium to make that message. It's still got to be delivered well. The example you gave where the amount of time somebody will phone, hey, Paul, it's so-and-so from so-and-so, how are you? And I don't know the so-and-so from so-and-so, and they're asking me how I am, and I'm kind of like, you just get to the point. What, why are you calling me? Just being concise and mindful of people's time. I think we are all living incredibly busy lives now, and we just need to be aware of that.
So, has anybody ever left a message for you that was so compelling that you had to call them back right away? Was there?
Yeah, my posters haven't gone up. Problems. No, again, it's about being relevant. So somebody leaves a message, they're very clear about who they are, why they want to speak to me. If that's relevant to me, I'll call them back. But again, the amount of calls that you get that somebody will say, again, I'm Dave from such and such a company, can you call me back? I don't know Dave from such and such a company,
You're not calling
so
them back?
no, I'm not going to call you back because I've got no idea what it's about. So it's not rocket science, but there's a real disparity between the level of quality of contacts that you get from people.
So somebody finally gets that seat in front of you. They're in your office. What are some of the approaches that you appreciated the most? How did some of those conversations start? And what were the kind of questions, if you can remember, that they asked that kept you engaged?
Again, not specific, but it's exactly what Rick's highlighting. You know, it's a level of care and curiosity to my business. And I want to know that somebody's thinking about the bigger picture. You know, if you're coming to see me, I know you've probably got a billboard to sell. You know, that's
Right.
probably fairly straightforward. And again, we could get into nuances about location, to your point, and your pricing, but a billboard's a billboard, you know, to a degree. So the thing that will make you stand out is to actually to care enough to ask those questions. You know, what is the client trying to achieve? What's the message they're looking to convey? You know, who's the target audience? How's it going to be measured? Is it driving short-term sales? Are we looking at influencing brands? Is it reappraisal? Is it perceptions? You know, there's 1,000,001 questions about wider communications that you can ask, which will make me sit up and take notice and think you're somebody who cares about the outputs that ultimately we're trying to deliver on behalf of our clients.
So it's a lot like what Rick said, but on a much grander scale.
100%. It doesn't
Yeah.
matter whether you're a plumber in Texas versus a national or multinational advertiser. Ultimately, you're trying to grow your market share or drive more sales. You know,
Okay.
It's about selling, and it doesn't matter at what level and what scale. We have lots of small clients as well, local clients. We really do. But the general premise of advertising and media is exactly the same.
So, yeah, and it's interesting because the gentleman that spoke earlier this morning, I'm going to butcher his name, Rashad Tobakawala. Am I saying that? Rashad T. How about that? Rashad T. And he alluded to about the fact that that one of the things that would give us an edge because we're now at home is if we take the consultative approach, the need satisfaction approach. He said people need insights. They need access to ideas. They need to augment, expand, and somebody needs to tell them the story. You know, we've talked about this before. A great champion of out-of-home industry, Carl Eller, who just recently passed away, and I remember Carl Eller saying this, and that was, he said, I asked him, I said, if you were going to talk to if you ran into an AE in an elevator, and they said, Mr. Eller, I'm just starting in sales. What do I need to do to succeed? I said, what would you tell them? And he said, I would tell them, never walk into a sales call without a great idea, a selling idea, or a great piece of creative, which reminded me so much of kind of, you know, and you'd mentioned this one time, one of our pre-calls, that it's great when somebody can come to you with ideas.
Yeah, we're a creative industry, and our clients are always challenging us to be creative. And you know, I'm really lucky that we've got a load of creative people that work for our business. But creativity shouldn't just be from the agency. Creativity can come from anywhere, at any level. So it's always going to, again, make you stand out from your competitors if you can actually come with ideas that we can take on and develop.
So I'm curious, what was the best close you ever heard?
So I haven't got an answer for this because I'm from the UK. We're massively sceptical of selling, right? We're really snobbish about it. And the irony is we all sell. I think the close for us is a hard sell, and we tend not to like hard selling. I think, in fact, actually, Tommy, would you mind if you got the clicker there? Just
Yeah,
click
I
on a
do,
couple
I
of
do.
slides.
Wait.
There was one thing I was going to reference on it from our perspective. One thing that I always look for in any relationship, and actually whether this is personal, whether it's your friends, your partners, whether it's business, it's trust. I mean, ultimately, that's what we're trying to get to, right? And that point about what it is you're actually trying to convey. You might be trying to sell a billboard, ultimately. That's absolutely fine. I've got no issue with that. I'm in the market of buying billboards, right? But I want to trust you as a partner, as a media partner. That's what I strive for with our clients. And sometimes that might be taking a long-term approach. So whilst this may be horrific to salespeople, but I've turned down client budgets before, because I don't feel it was right for the client. The client may come with some money, they want to do something in out of home, they tell me what the objectives are, and I don't think they can achieve it. I genuinely don't, and I'll tell them that. So that might be bad, but you know what? I lose out in the short term, but I can guarantee that client now trusts me more, and they will come back to me, and they will ask for my advice more. And over a longer term, that will more than pay back. And I think, again, that consultative approach that, again, you mentioned, it's paramount in business, and trust is the fundamental aspect of it. And, you know, we touch upon up there about the words you say, the credibility that you deliver, the way you make people feel, that's emotional and it's important. But all these things combined critically come to that trust point. And I think fundamentally for me, it's not about a close, a hard sell. It's a long-term process. That's what I want to do. I want to build long-term relationships.
So Paul, after the sales call and that post-call period, are there any expectations you have from that particular seller?
Depends on what happened in the meeting, but ultimately deliver what you tell me you're going to deliver. Again, it comes back to trust. I have no more expectation than that. Let's agree what the next steps are, and then I expect you to deliver against that.
Good, good. Do y'all have time for questions? Sure. Anybody like to direct a question to Rick or Paul from a local or national perspective? Keep it, not all at once. Okay. Hey, last question for you. Well, it's actually 3 questions. What do you wish we as sellers would start doing? I have no idea how to turn that on.
Stop doing, did you say?
No, start.
Oh, start doing. I mean, it's going to sound like a cop-out, but this point that Rick's brought up about a consultative approach, a curiosity-based approach, I can't stress how important that is to me. It shows a level of care and due diligence that goes way beyond what I would expect. So you can deliver that, you stand out more, and the more partners I get doing that, the better solutions I should get on behalf of my clients, which means it's win-win for everybody. So more of a consultative, question-based approach, listen to what our needs are, okay, ask those good questions, and then try and deliver against them.
How about, what would you like us to stop doing? If you ruled the world, yeah.
Again, it's wasting time for me and for you, right? So again, concise, simple, relevant. That's all I want. And the amount of calls and messages and work that we get that isn't,
okay,
that wastes both our time as well as your own. So stop that side of it.
Terrific, terrific. Rick, do you have anything you would like to add?
I guess that
there's a mic right there.
We try to look long term, and because our billboards aren't going anywhere. You know, I mean, I think 20 years down the road, there's going to be some other crazy media that is out there, and but we're still going to be in the out-of-home business. And unless they fall over, or some crazy ordinance or legislation goes into effect, our billboards aren't going anywhere. So we really try to be disciplined and think long-term and avoid the threat of being transactional. And I know it sounds really simple and maybe hokey to some people, but I would just rather operate in a business like that where we recruit people, we keep people who are curious and interested, than people who are more inclined to talk about what they know.
You know, it's so interesting. You know, Rick, the whole conversation started with Rick talking about being curious. And like we're in a situation where we have a CFO who's about to retire. And I was talking to the group that were interviewing for these CFOs, and of course, you know, they tend to look for people at Wall Street, and they tend to look at people that are very comfortable dealing with large investment houses. And I asked them, I said, so I assume the most important thing is that they're a CPA. And they said no. And I'm thinking, yeah, that scared me, Don. I said, I always think of the CFO as being like the number one accountant, the accountant over the 25 CPAs that you have in that building, and they're the best CPA. They scored higher on the exam than anybody, right? They said, no, that's not important at all. So, you know, we want somebody that has a strong background in finance and understanding bond issues, et cetera, but they said what we look for are people at that level who are curious, who ask the ones that go to the controller and say, how do we do this? Why do we do it this way? Why do we allow this? And not accused, but why do we do it the way we do it? Because they said they tend to have a much grander picture of how that business works. And that's exactly what you're doing on a local level. And I think if I sum up everything that we've talked about so far, and Paul's hit on over and over again, and the same thing that, you know, Rashad said this morning, and that is, it's being able to ask those open-ended questions, need satisfaction questions, trying to find out what, out of all the different products or services that they have at that bank or in that hospital, which one are they most concerned about? What would they like to accomplish? What are they doing right now? What are their plans to get to where they're going to be? What are the obstacles? How do they plan to get around those obstacles? And then what are they doing to reach them now? And then hopefully be able to give you the kind of metrics that show that maybe you have a way that could make your other media even more effective than it is right now. Gentlemen, I really thank you for your time. I appreciate all the preparation, and I thank y'all because you could be by the pool right now. But I think they're serving alcohol somewhere soon. So y'all, thank you so much for coming. I appreciate it.